more than ever. Those who share their stories will be a witness of the impact that bridge building can make in working to make us one. Secondly, we're asked to reflect on the bridges in our world, the bridges that need crossing to expand our circles of compassion, the bridges that need repairing to let hope and light shine forth, the bridges that need imagining to create new spaces and new possibilities, and the bridges the world is calling us to create in cooperation with each other. And third, we're called to act. We are called to build bridges. We're called to build bridges. And this call needs to begin right here with you and the 12 times to talk about ways that we could build bridges with each other. He cited many leaders over the course of the United States history who were bridge builders. Abraham Lincoln, Dorothy Day, Thomas Merton, Martin Luther King. Toward the end of his address, he spoke to the concept of bridge building with dialogue while talking about the complex issue of immigration here in the U.S. He said, "A nation which seeks the common good cannot be closed in on itself. Societies are strengthened by networks of relationships. The current problem of immigration makes this clear." He went on to say, "Instead of raising walls, we need to be building bridges instead of raising walls." And so I ask you, as we prepare to begin this journey, are you ready to be people who build bridges instead of raising walls? That's good, because my next two questions didn't mean anything if you said no. So. Secondly, are we ready to be people seeking dialogue as a way to build bridges? Okay. And thirdly, are we ready to be people who build bridges of solidarity, bringing us together as one? So the time is now, the place is here. Let's be bridges. Again, welcome. We're honored to have you here with us. We are honored to build bridges with you. Thank you so much.
Okay, we're going to be beginning with our opening prayer. And as we move into prayer, we ask every delegation to please choose one representative who will bring up the water to the main stage during the prayer, and you will be called up by your geographical region. So to lead us into prayer, I'd like to introduce Crystal Catalan, who is staff at Presentation High School, and Connor Mullen, who is a graduate of Ignatian High School, Cleveland, John Carroll, and Georgetown Law.
We gather here as one Ignatian family to commemorate the Salvadoran Jesuit martyrs, their companions, and how their commitment to social justice and solidarity have been bridges from violence to peace, from hatred to love, from injury to pardon, from doubt to faith, despair to hope. They are bridges from darkness into light.
God is our loving companion who journeys with us from before we are born into the world throughout our journeys upon the earth. And God will be with us as we enjoy life eternally. Let us pause after our travels to quiet our hearts, minds, and souls. Let us join our hearts together in prayer and dwell in the presence of God among the Ignatian family.
Let us give thanks for our martyrs whose lives and deaths have brought us together. They are our bridge. Arriving here, their lives are the foundation that unites us as a family. Let us honor the UCA Jesuits, Elba and Selena, Oscar Romero, Rutilio Grande, the 4 American churchwomen, the disappeared, tortured, and all of those who lose their lives due to extreme violence and poverty. In their living and their dying, they have formed a bridge between the past and those on the margins of society today. All of this, all of us, we continue to build bridges in our lives. Let this weekend, this gathering of the Ignatian family, continue building the bridge of hope for the future.
Our committed relationships between the rich and the poor allow us to explore compassion, to recognize areas that need repairing, to imagine fresh streams of life. General Congregation 35 of the Jesuits calls us to the complexity of the problems we face and the richness of the opportunities offered demand that we build bridges between rich and poor, establishing advocacy links of mutual support between those who hold political power and those who find it difficult to voice their interests. We begin our time here in this weekend in prayer. We will engage in dialogue about issues that need our time and talent, and we will take these messages to Capitol Hill to amplify the cry of the poor.
Bridges. They cross water and land, time and distance, cultures and climates. They unite ideas, connect communities, support sojourners, and shelter those seeking refuge. Whether they were crossed 50 years ago for voting rights, or 50 minutes ago to visit a friend, whether they unite faith and justice, or 2 banks of a river, whether they are created when someone reaches out to us, or when we reach out to others, bridges are an inescapable part of life.
We are asked to reflect on the bridges in our world, the bridges that need crossing, to expand our circles of compassion, the bridges that need repairing, to let hope and light shine forth, the bridges that need imagining, to create new spaces and possibilities, and the bridges the world is calling us to create in cooperation with others.
Let us turn our attention to water that often flows under bridges, occasionally over. God begins the creation of our world with water, a source of life. Throughout our salvation history, we hear that water is powerful. Water allows us to live. Water can also destroy. When it is lacking, we struggle. When it is not purified, we die. Christ used water throughout his ministry to celebrate at Cana, to heal, and to humbly serve in the washing of feet. Let us be cognizant of the ways we use water to hydrate, to cleanse, to refresh and renew, to heal, and to bless.
May we remember those who do not have easy or free access to clean drinking water, a life source for us all. Let us protect the natural resource in our mindfulness, in our usage, in our advocacy.
The Ignatian family builds bridges in our lives of faith. We strengthen and strive for solidarity and love in our world. We invite each of you to truly bring your prayers to this space. Take time now to think of a word or a phrase that you wish to offer as a prayer.
We will combine our prayers through water, the water from our own barrios, neighborhoods within these vessels. We invite our delegations by geographical regions as we unite our hearts in prayer. When your area is called, please come forward.
We first welcome our family members from outside of the United States, those who have crossed borders to be here. Will delegations from Canada, El Salvador, Mexico, and other international homes please come forward with your water.
From the shore of the Pacific and the rivers of the Rocky Mountains, we welcome our delegations from the West. Please come forward with your water.
From the Gulf of Mexico and the mighty Mississippi, family from the South, please come up with your water.
From the Great Lakes and the Heartland Delta, Midwest family, bring forth your water.
From the shores of the Atlantic, groups from the East Coast, bring us your water.
Make us people
Let us join our hearts in prayer as we bless this water as a community.
Dear sisters and brothers, let us humbly ask God to bless this water, which we are brought from near and far. It will be sprinkled on us at tomorrow's liturgy to remind us of our baptism, by which we were all made sisters and brothers, one people joined together by Christ's Spirit. May God give us the grace to be true to the Spirit we have received. And if I could ask everyone here in the hall and in this congregation to extend your hands straight up towards these bowls of water for blessing. Lord our God, in your mercy, be present to your people's prayers. As we recall how you wondrously made us, and even more how you redeemed us, graciously bless this water. For you created water to make the fields fruitful and to refresh and cleanse our bodies. You also made water the instrument of your mercy. For through water you freed your people from slavery and quenched their thirst in the desert. Through water the prophets proclaimed the new covenant you made with the human race. And last of all, through water, which Christ made holy in the Jordan, you have transformed our sinful ways in the regenerative water of baptism. Grant in your kindness, O God of hope, that your living waters may well up in us, so that our hearts and deeds always yearn for your saving justice and peace. We make this prayer through Christ our Lord. Amen. This blessed water can be accessed throughout the teach-in. You are welcome to bless yourselves with it when you gather. It will also be used during the sprinkling rite of our closing liturgy tomorrow evening, as we are blessed and showered with all of our prayers in the tradition of entering into relationship with God and one another through baptism with water.
God of life, help us to remember that for some the earth is parched. We lift to you those for whom clean water is not a basic right, but a luxury. We cry out, O God, against conflict and violence that leaves crops to wither and drives families from their homes to lands where fresh, clean water is only a dream. And together we pray, in this season of rebirth, may we heed your call to hunger and thirst for righteousness, and may your justice and righteousness roll down as an ever-flowing stream.
Thank you for that beautiful prayer. And now, help me welcome our Ignatian Network speakers. We have first up the Carol Ballers from John Carroll University speaking on the Courts, Off the Streets.
Hello, everyone. My name is Becky Barsa, and I'm a student at John Carroll University. The five of us are up here to represent the Carroll Ballers. And the Carroll Ballers is an organization that aims to reduce the recidivism rate in juvenile detention centers. The way we do this is simple, through conversation, pizza, and basketball. We send about 8 students down to the detention centers every week, or 8 vans of students to detention centers every week, where we build relationships with these kids through an hour of mentoring and an hour of playing basketball. The program was started about 3.5 years ago. Just 2 students were throwing around a basketball in their dorm room, and they had a real passion for social justice. And ever since then, we have received incredible feedback about this program. From John Carroll students, residents at the JDC, the Juvenile Detention Centers, workers there, and the general community. So I could sit here and I could throw facts at you all day long about how this program is great. But what really makes it unique are those personal interactions that we have in each session. We have been challenged countless times in our attitudes, our thoughts. They challenge us, but we have the privilege to work with this unique population. And so while we have many stories to share, we're going to only keep it short and simple with a few. So now I invite Thomas to share a story that really has impacted him.
Whenever you hear juvenile detention center, the stereotypes of criminal, delinquent, deserve to be there often get tossed around by society about these kids. The first time that I realized this actually wasn't the case was during the first semester that I did Carroll Ballers, where I had a relationship with a kid. Took a couple weeks to build, but we eventually got to the point where we talked about my family, his family, the struggles that we both faced in different ways that we can better ourselves going forward. To start, we connected over the fact that we both have a little sister the same age. So right away, we were on the same page. And he actually began to tell me about his life story and how his dad walked out on him when he was little. His mom was selling the food stamps that they were receiving for crack cocaine. And it got to the point where he told me that he was in the detention center for the reason that he was stealing food from corner marts and superstores to feed his little sisters who had not eaten in 3 days. He himself had not eaten in 5. And so right then, I realized that this wasn't just a kid or a criminal or a delinquent who didn't deserve a second chance at society, but rather a young man trying to survive. It was just that first time that I realized these kids deserve so much more going forward, and he honestly was just a young man trying to survive.
Hi, my name is Jackie, and I've been involved in the Female Carroll Ballers program for the past 2.5 years. I'll never forget the first time I came to the Juvenile Detention Center, where I walked into the room, and there were 5 girls. They didn't know us, and we didn't know them. We were all strangers. Of the 5 girls, they were all talkative. But there was one girl in the corner who wouldn't talk. As we started each lesson, we stated our name and a fun fact about ourselves. There was the one girl who didn't speak, but we asked the guard what her name is, just to start a conversation. The guard told us her name is Abby, and Abby doesn't like to talk. Abby's quiet, doesn't talk to anybody, just to herself all the time. It wasn't until the 4th week where she stated her name, stood up and said, "Hi, my name is Abby, and my fun fact is I like to rap." We were all taken aback, and she starts standing up right there and starts rapping about the Carroll Ballers program. Right then and there, we saw how much Carroll Ballers has meant to her and how her perception of the Juvenile Detention Center has changed.
Hey guys, I'm Kaylee. You're Jackie. So Jackie just shared an example of how she watched a resident have a changed perspective, but I'm going to tell you about how my perspective entirely changed. I've been very lucky to be surrounded by very positive role models forever, especially strong, hardworking women. So it was very challenging for me to understand that the girls at the JDC have no one to look up to. They're surrounded by negative influences, and I didn't get it. That is until I met Jane. She was sitting on the side of the basketball court, would not make eye contact with me, just only to roll her eyes at me, of course. So me being me, I sat right down next to her. She refused to talk to me, and then just all of a sudden, she decided to open her heart up to me. She talked to me about her home life and how her mom's really not around and how she's just really upset. And it was an awesome opportunity to talk to her about how her attitude transcends and affects all aspects of her life. And of course, she may not be enjoying her time at the JDC. It is a great time to step back and to reflect and to really decide to make a change for the future. So I was so nervous to see her the next week, and I was in for an amazing surprise when she came in, threw her arms around me and started hugging me and was thanking me and said, "No one has ever been so real with me." Jane taught me that a simple conversation can make the worlds of a difference. She taught me that I truly might be the only positive influence that these girls have. Jane taught me why the Carol Brawlers program is truly so important.
So, like Thomas, Kaylee, and Jackie, I've had transformative experiences as well, and I hope that we have touched many more lives than just the couple that we talked about here tonight. Going forward, though, we are building, and we're doing it in a much deeper way than it may appear on the surface. So it's not just between rich and poor, or white and black. It's in reality bridges through this program. That's our goal. That's what we're here to talk about this weekend. And we're doing it in a much deeper way than it may appear on the surface. So it's not just between rich and poor, or white and black. It's in reality person to person. It's getting to know these young men and women through our much greater similarities rather than our differences, and really building on those and finding ways that we connect really through basketball, through pizza, and through dialogue. And so we invite you to come to our breakout session tomorrow and hear a little bit more about what we're doing each session to try to build these relationships, and to hear a little bit more about where we're trying to go going forward. And think of maybe a dark, desolate place, and you hear a lot of stereotypes. When we invite you to come talk with us tomorrow and hear how we're trying to inspire hope in a place. When you hear JDC, like Thomas said, you often think of maybe a dark, desolate place, and you hear a lot of stereotypes. When we invite you to come talk with us tomorrow and hear how we're trying to inspire hope in a place where it often may appear non-existent.
All right. It is my great privilege to welcome Brandon Underwood, who is a senior at St. Louis University High School, and he's going to speak to us about My Awakening to Racial Issues and Social Justice. Please welcome Brandon.
Good evening. As she said, I am Brendan Underwood, a senior at St. Louis University High School. August 27th, 2014 was my worst and best birthday. The night of my birthday, I was furious. My face was soaked with tears of frustration and pain at what had transpired in Ferguson just 18 days earlier. On August 9th, Michael Brown was gunned down in the middle of the street. His body laid in the street for 4 hours. An officer had again decided to become judge, juror, and executioner when it came to the life of a young black male. Mike Brown was 18 years old. He was a recent high school graduate with plans for his future. Yet the media wasted no time dragging his name through the mud. My indignation began to give way to fear, however, because I had just turned 17. I was only 1 year younger than Mike Brown. Mike Brown was the latest in a series of young black men whose futures have been denied. But this time, I couldn't turn away because Mike Brown was killed 3 miles away from my home. In that moment, it was no longer Mike Brown's body laying in the street. It was my own. It was my brother Danny's body. It was my little brother Marcus's body. It was unbearable. I know I would do anything to protect my brothers. How could I not stand when other people's brothers and fathers are being killed because they're young, black, and male? How can I not demand that black lives are just as precious as any other life? I felt called to seek justice for all my brothers and sisters whose human dignity was being robbed. This call to seek justice was my birthday present. Each of us here possesses a call, a passion for justice. It has different forms for all of us, but for me, at the time, it was wild and unformed. I started with the easiest place to reach, myself. After my transformative 17th birthday, I immersed myself into studies dealing with racial and social justice. Slowly, I started to feel a passion for change forming within me. I realized what every advocate for change comes to grips with. I couldn't do it alone. I knew I needed solidarity. With hindsight, you could say that I needed to build bridges with the world around me. I started with one of my teachers, Mr. Zinzelmeyer. I took a deep breath before I sent the email to Mr. Z to ask if he'll read The Racial Contract by Charles Mills with me. I was nervous that he might say no. If Mr. Z had said he was too busy to read the book with me, my journey to build bridges in my community might have ended before it even got started. But Mr. Z said yes. He helped me pursue a deeper understanding of the world around me. He helped me realize that I had the power to build bridges around me and help them flourish. The first bridge I made was with my family. I know no matter how angry I make my older brother Danny, I can always rely on him to push that aside and discuss any topic at length with me in order to challenge my understanding of the world. I honestly believe he has higher aspirations for me than I do for myself. Next, I looked at the community around me. I started working with the local Urban League. The Urban League strives to enable African Americans to secure economic self-reliance, equality, power, and civil rights. This past summer, I participated in the Urban League National Summit with other young people. We learned how to foster greater solidarity in our cities. At that summit, I realized that young people like you and me are constantly at work trying to better our society. Lastly, I built a bridge at my school. I was given a rare opportunity to speak in front of the entire faculty and staff about the importance of achieving racial inclusion. I was nervous, but I knew I had something important to say. I knew they needed to hear a young person's perspective. In this speech, I stressed that both teachers and students have valuable opinions to be shared on the issue of racism. Rather than just talk about the idea of building bridges between students and teachers, I wanted to do it. So I established a group called Student Teacher Association for Racial Study, also known as STARS. STARS is currently examining the autobiography of Malcolm X, which walks through the journey of an imperfect man and his passion for the betterment of a people and a nation. STARS strives to be more than just men and women for others. We are men and women with others. I think that's why we're all here. We are actively trying to be men and women for and with others. I know there are a lot of issues in America that need to be addressed. I know it can seem like the problem is too big, but I also know that each of us must listen to our own call. Each of us is called to awaken to the ways we can fight injustice. Your call to social justice might manifest it differently than mine. It could be confronting a friend telling a racist joke. It could be starting a heart-to-heart dialogue with your own parents, or it could mean starting your own social justice group. But at the heart of each call must be the hope that change is possible. We must have faith and hope in ourselves and our fellow men and women. We must possess the hope that this journey that we are on, no matter the speed, will lead us to justice. My favorite quote from Martin Luther King speaks to this. If you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you have to keep moving forward. With our passion for change, we all have to keep moving forward. For ourselves, for our communities, for the greater glory of God. Thank you.
Thank you, Brendan. To say that was inspiring is an understatement. That was wonderful. And now please help me put your hands together for our next speaker, Father Rick Malloy of the University of Scranton, speaking on It's Time to Build Bridges, Now Walls.
Kind of tough to follow the last two acts, let me tell you. Ignatian Family Teaching 2015. Great to see you here. Yo! Yo, how are you doing? Reminds me of a story. A guy called up his friend, and his friend's little boy answered the phone. Hello. He says, hi, Johnny, how you doing? Good. Is your daddy there? Yes. Can I speak to him? No. Why not? He's busy. Well, is your mommy there? Yes. Well, can I speak to her? No. Well, why not? She's busy. Well, look, I got it. Daddy is talking to the police. The police? Mommy is talking to the firemen. The firemen? What's going on over there? Everybody is looking for me. We are looking for you. We need you who have gone to Jesuit schools to begin to realize that it's time for no more plastic Jesus. Well, I don't care if it rains or freezes, as long as I got my plastic Jesus riding on the dashboard of my car. If the weather gets real scary, always got Magnetic Barry riding on the dashboard of my car. Plastic Jesus, riding on the dashboard of my car. Magnetic Mary's gotta go, she's scrambling up my radio, riding on the dashboard of my car. There was a time back in Philadelphia where all the Irish Catholics thought all you had to do was put that little statue on your car and you were done. No, we've got to build bridges, people. We got to tear down walls. I spent 15 years in Camden, New Jersey, 15 wonderful years. Loved it there. The Diamond on the Delaware. And I always took this Ben Franklin Bridge as a metaphor for what we were doing. Right over there on the right-hand side of the picture is North Camden. On the other side of the bridge, on the Philadelphia side, left side, was a guy named John Trumbore. He was at the parish the Jesuits run there at 4th and Willings Alley in Philadelphia. Started in 1733. The only place in the English-speaking world where Mass could be legally celebrated at that time. He would come over to North Camden and help us. He helped a kid named Jose Vasquez get to St. Joe's University, a kid from North Camden. Today, Anna Ryan, a tiny little campus minister from St. Joe's, she's making those connections from St. Joe's out to the Jesuit schools. Jesuit works are always trying to build bridges, always trying to make connections. What happens when we don't build good bridges? Without good bridges, people suffer. Without good bridges, children like Alin and Gallup Curdy do not survive. 60 million of our brothers and sisters, refugees in the world today. New York Times, front page of their website today, has a beautiful article about this situation. 60 million, 30 million of them are children. We have to stop this. You're going to go to Congress on Monday and talk to them to do what they can to prevent such atrocities. We used to be the people who tore down walls. Now there's a guy with funny hair saying we should build walls. I've got no hair and I'm saying tear the walls down. We've got a wall and it's not working. It's not keeping anybody out and it's costing us billions of dollars. Bridges have been built in the past. When I was 5 years old, a little girl named Ruby Bridges went to a school in New Orleans, and no one would teach her. And a woman from Boston, Barbara Henry, volunteered. And they sat in a room together for a year by themselves, integrating a school that nobody wanted integrated. And they changed our world, and they changed it for the better. And young men like Brendan are now sharing their vision with us. There's still a long ways to go, but there have been bridges built. Last week, little Sophie Cruz got past the guards, got to the Pope. She asks the Pope to talk to our legislators so that her family doesn't get torn apart. You can change our country. You can change our world. We can change our country. We can change our world. Turn to the person next to you, say it. You can change our country. You can change our world. We can change our country. We can change our world. Dear young people, do not bury your talents. The gifts God has given you, do not have to be afraid to dream of great things. Listen to this Pope. Listen to our community. Listen to our Ignatian family. Imagination is powerful. Few people could imagine what God would do with them if they wholeheartedly abandoned themselves into his hands. Find your inner Iggy this weekend. Imagine who you could be, what we could do. Get your Jesuit on, a yearning for learning, a flair for prayer, and an attitude of gratitude. You know, so many people tell me, oh, young people today, oh, millennials, oh, they're all on their cell phones. Oh, look, the top 20% of you guys are better than we ever thought of being. You're smarter, you're thinner, you're better looking, you know how to work all the gadgets. The bottom 20% make me really worry about who's going to run my nursing home, but that's another matter. But I love this message. I think the world is much better today than it was, say, 5 years ago. How can you say that? Don't you ever read the papers? Don't you ever listen to the radio? How can you stand there and tell me this is a better world? I'm in it now. You're in it now. This is your time. This is your place. This is your world. We await what you will do with your wild, wonderful lives. Build bridges that will make us all happy and healthy and holy and free. Tear down walls that separate us from one another. Listen to this Pope. With apologies to Woody Guthrie. This place is your place. This place is my place. God gave this green place for the whole human race. From the Himalayas to the deep blue sea space. This place was made for you and me. This place is your place. This place is my place. God gave this green place for the whole human race. From the Himalayas to the deep blue sea space. This place was made for you and me. And everybody.
Caminando, caminando. Let's all stand up just to sing this chant together. Caminando, caminando. Vamos caminando hacia el sol. Vamos caminando hacia el sol. Caminando, caminando, vamos caminando hacia la libertad. One more time. Caminando, caminando, vamos. Vamos caminando hacia el sol, moving towards the sun. Caminando, caminando, moving towards freedom. Vamos caminando hacia la libertad. Oh.
It is my honor to introduce tonight's keynote speaker, Sister Helen Prejean. raised in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Sister Helen Prejean is many things. She's a member of the Congregation of St. Joseph, an educator, and a best-selling author. And she's one of the nation's leading advocates for the abolition of the death penalty. Sister Helen began her prison ministry in 1981. While living in New Orleans' St. Thomas Housing Project, she became pen pals with Patrick Sanier. Sanier had been convicted for killing 2 teens, a crime for which he was sentenced to death in the electric chair in Louisiana's Angola State Prison. Sanier asked Sister Helen to begin visiting him as a spiritual advisor. And she did. Her eyes were open to the execution process in Louisiana. Sister Helen would turn these experiences into a book called Dead Man Walking, an eyewitness account to the death penalty. Published in 1993, Dead Man Walking was a #1 on the New York Times bestseller for 31 weeks. It was translated into 10 languages and became an international bestseller. In 1996, Dead Man Walking was developed into an acclaimed major motion picture starring Susan Sarandon as Sister Helen and Sean Penn as a death row inmate. It was nominated for 4 Oscars. Since then, Sister Helen and Dead Man Walking have been the subject of many media stories. Her extraordinary story has even been made into an opera. 15 years after her crusade began, Sister Helen has witnessed 5 executions in Louisiana. Today, she travels the country educating the public about the death penalty through her speaking, writing, and organizing. She founded a victims advocacy group in New Orleans called Survive, and she continues to counsel inmates on death row, as well as the families of the murder victims. Sister Helen has served on the board of the National Coalition to Abolish the Death Penalty. She is a member of Amnesty International and an honorary member of Murder Victim Families for Reconciliation. Presently, Sister Helen is the honorary chairperson for the Moratorium Campaign, a group gathering signatures for a worldwide moratorium on the death penalty. In 2000, she helped Kofi Annan, Secretary General of the UN, with 2.5 million signatures from all over the world, calling for a moratorium of the death penalty. She is an inspiration to us all, and it is a privilege to have us here with this evening. And she has been a hero of mine ever since I heard her speak at the Ignatian Family Teach-In in 2006. So we are so honored to welcome Sister Helen Prejean.
Maybe the first bridge is the bridge to our own hearts that the Holy Spirit of God, when we get awakened. And when you think about it, we can't wake ourselves up. Enlightenment or awakening in any spiritual tradition is about suddenly we get it. Something flashes. St. Bonaventure said, don't ask for knowledge. Ask for the fire. Because when we catch on fire, then we are transformed. It took me a while to get it about social justice. I didn't have anything like an Ignatian teach-in when I was in high school or college. The spirituality we were learning was much more, it was about being close to God, but it wasn't about justice. I had to awaken to justice. It took me a while to awaken to justice. And what I love about this Pope, Francis, when you read his story, it took him a while to awaken to justice. He was on the other side of things when the Jesuits took a turn through their general, Pedro Arrupe, to move toward justice. He was on the other side when liberation, theology first awakened, and he was in Argentina. He wasn't there. He didn't get it. He was put in authority at a young age, and he was very authoritarian. Here's what the rules say. Here's what the doctrine says. Here's what the church is about. And even in the case of 2 young Jesuits who wanted to go live in the slums, he forbade them to do it. They went anyway. They felt the gospel was calling them to live among the poor. And he dismissed them. And it was in Argentina during the time when it was called the Dirty War, where people were being disappeared and they were being tortured. And those 2 young guys were put into a place of torture for 6 months. And when in his first interview after he got to be Pope, when they said, "Who is Jorge Bergoglio?" he said, "I am a sinner." And he started talking about mercy. Because it's in God's mercy, through the people God sends us, we begin to wake up. And he went through a very dark period where he was basically exiled out of the country, sent to another country to get a PhD. That's the way the Jesuits exile you. They send you to go get a PhD. But it was a real dark, dark time for him, and they even had to monitor his phone calls when he would call back to Buenos Aires, because he would start fights. People were either for him or against him. It was a source of great division. And so for 2 dark years, he was trying to make his way, and he'd walk along this river in this little town of Cordoba with basically no mission, nothing, just a prayer, trying to sort his way of what God was calling him to do. And then this archbishop in Buenos Aires, who knew him, invited him to come back to Buenos Aires and to be an auxiliary bishop. And the Jesuits were saying, no, don't let him have authority. He doesn't know how to handle authority. And he moved into the slums with the poor. And he will tell you this. He says this. They taught me. He visited them in their homes. He rode with them on the bus. And after 18 years of doing that, he was known as the Bishop of the Slums. And then he bought his ticket to Rome to go for the election of the Pope. He had a round-trip ticket. It ended up he didn't use the other half of the ticket. And when I heard this and saw that when he came to that balcony where you usually give the blessing to the world, he bowed his head and he asked people to pray for him. That is our Holy Father, our leader now, and he's teaching us all. My own story, in a way, is similar in that it took me a long time to wake up that it was more than about being charitable. And see, in a way, Christianity's gotten really comfortable for us. You know, we go to Mass, and we belong to our parishes, and we belong to the church. But most of us have health care. Most of us have a really good education. Most of us have been given so much. And my awakening happened, and it was grace, because it's in the first part of Dead Man Walking, because it changed the spiritual trajectory of my life. And when something happens to us where we get it, and it sticks with us, it's not a little passing thing, oh yeah, I got this great insight on a retreat, maybe I'll do this. And it was about Jesus. And truthfully, I'd gone to this conference about Jesus, and I wasn't too happy about this conference. We all were bussed up to Terre Haute, Indiana. We were like captive. We all went to this conference, and it was on social justice. And I'd been one of the big speakers in the community that was saying, we are nuns. We're not social workers. What's the deal with all this social justice stuff? I'm not going to get involved. I'm not getting involved with politics. I'm spiritual. I transcend politics. And I pray for the world. And these big problems, that's God's problem. You pray to God. God takes care of the poor people. We're only one little person. And here was this nun, Maria Augusta Neal. For 3 days we captive. We caught. We had to stay in these dormitories. This is summer. The girls are away from St. Mary of the Woods. So the first day, when Sister Maria Augusta Neal talked, and I said, well, maybe with God's grace I can get through all this, man. We're not going to become politicians. We nuns and all this social justice stuff. And the first day I came through unscathed. And then she announced the next day she's going to talk about Jesus. I said, bring on Jesus. I know Jesus. I had studied scripture at Notre Dame. I had made Ignatian retreats. I knew how to do discernment like Ignatius taught us. I knew about Jesus. What's she going to tell us about Jesus? And I'll tell you the line. And I'm sitting just like you sitting. And see, we never know when this awakening happens within our hearts. And she said, Jesus preached good news to the poor. I had read that. How many times had I read that? And I knew all about Matthew 25. You know, I was hungry, he gave me to eat. I was thirsty, he gave me to drink. I was a stranger, he took me in. I was a prisoner, he came to me. And whenever I'd come to that line about the prison thing, we all our own little spin doctors with those scriptures. Because I'd say, oh, well, yeah, like if you shy, that's kind of like being in prison. I didn't think it meant go to prison. I mean, really. And then, and so when she said, Jesus preached good news to the poor, I thought I knew what she was going to say next. About how every hair of our head is numbered, how loved we are by God, like not a sparrow falls to the ground without Abba, God so close we can call God Daddy. And all of that is true. But what Sister Maria Augustine said was integral to the good news that Jesus preached to poor people is that they would be poor no longer. It was not God's will for them to be poor. And I realized that I had been glorifying suffering. Well, they're poor and their children are dying and they don't have health care, but they're suffering with Christ on the cross, and one day they'll have a great reward in heaven. But I didn't know any really poor people. I lived in the suburbs of New Orleans, and I was a DRE. I was doing good stuff. But I didn't really know any poor people, and I didn't know what they're suffering. We had 10 major housing projects in New Orleans, and I'd never been to any of them. I said, well, if any of the sisters, they feeling called to go work with the poor, well, go work with the poor. But I didn't feel any call to go work with the poor. I don't know the poor. Kind of like this little girl that wrote this essay one time. The name of the essay was The Poor Family. She said once there was a very poor family. The mother was poor. The father was poor. The children were poor. The chauffeur was poor. The gardener was poor. I could have written the essay. And when I awakened, integral to the good news to poor people was the community Jesus formed. And we did this for 300 years till Constantine came and our religion became more of an institution, that we formed a community in such a way that no one was in need. And then I began to think of it, that the theology I had heard and the theology I had learned, it is not God's will for some people to be poor. And here again we have our Pope Francis. We got to tackle the economics of things. I mean, it's really figuring in now as we're beginning to see the end of the death penalty in the United States, because we are waking up. It's happening. Because of people like you, because of us, because we're waking up the people about what it means to take a human being who's done a crime and take them out and kill them. And the stories are all getting out now. Well, what about the guards now that have to do the killing for us? What about the wardens who have to take a human being, render them defenses, take them out and kill them? Oh, but the Supreme Court says it's okay. Oh, but for a long time we never thought about it. I never thought about it. I wasn't awake about it. And then when I heard, because of the budget crunches in the states, that the costliness of the death penalty is one of the factors, That's the reason why states are beginning to shut down the death penalty. It made me sad. Then I said, oh, man, to think that money's going to be the thing, and people are going to say, I don't want to be spending all my tax dollars on executing people, and we can put them in prison. And then I remembered Martin Luther King had said, a budget is a moral document. And the way we spend our resources for life or death makes a huge difference. Everything needs to be filled with the Spirit of God, the way we spend our money, the way we do our economics. How is it that in the United States of America, we have simply allowed that we will have 42 million people who are poor? We seem to, in fact, sometimes I think we even blame poor people for being poor. Why don't they get up their duffs and their kids get to school? What those people need to do is, don't they know? They need to get a job. They need to have intact families. What is with those people? And so my waking up, when I left that conference with Maria Augusta Neal, I did a simple action, but it was very direct. I moved into the St. Thomas housing projects in New Orleans, and African American people became my teacher. I didn't even know the word white privilege. I didn't even know I was privileged. I just simply thought everybody acted like we did. I didn't know what it was to be a young black man and how you're treated by the police in St. Thomas. I wasn't scared of policemen. If my car had broken down on the highway and a state trooper had pulled behind me, I'd be glad. Help's on the way. And every young man in the St. Thomas Housing Project had had a negative experience with the police. It was a pattern. It's not to say every policeman's racist, but when you begin to see patterns, you know, the definition of intelligence is not the ability to know a whole lot of facts so you can win every trivial pursuit game.